Okay, so we kind of talked about the psychic thing a little bit, and we do have one kind of last question that I think Brittany had about the stranger side of the paranormal.
Okay. Strange.
Well, before we get into the really good stuff, she,
All right. Well, so a newer aspect of the paranormal is being discussed is synchronicities. It's like huge right now. Have you ever had that happen after a case where like something so profound that tied back to that?
Not that I can think of. Well, one of the things that I have had on investigations was deja vu.
Oh, okay.
Like I get wicked deja vu all the time. So, I mean, am I experiencing something from a different universe, a different reality? I don't know. It's something chemical wrong in my brain. That could be it too. But yeah, I mean, I don't know about that, but definitely I have experienced some deja vu, which made me think I was like, maybe I knew this person in a former life.
So is that your interpretation of deja vu, kind of like a past life remembrance thing?
Yeah. I think that's definitely one of the things that people do experience. But yeah, I think it happens.
Yeah,
definitely.
I kind of sometimes think when it comes to deja vu, but then again, I'm a nerd and I watch a lot of Marvel stuff, is maybe there's kind of a multiverse thing going on where I'm picking up on the deja vu because an alternate version of myself has gone through this already,
Yeah, I mean, it could be. I've had weird dreams where I was myself, but my leg amputation was my right leg, or I still had both my legs. It's some people say that in your dreams you travel to alternate universes, and who am I to say no? I think you're nuts. So it's so possible.
Or even just travel somewhere else here. Like Britt, you've discussed astral projection before. I don't know if you want to dive into that a little bit.
I worked with this guy years ago. His name was Jesse. Loved him like a brother. And he was a very devout Muslim man, but he had a lot of beliefs in supernatural things. And he used to tell me stories all the time that he had the ability to astral project or have an out of body experience. And he would have these things all the time. And he would tell me these stories, and it was like, and what I knew of Jesse is that he was an eminently honest man. There would be no reason for him to lie to me about this. Right. So it's like I listened to so many stories of his where he was like, yeah, the last night I left my body and I cruised around the south side of Chicago for a little bit and told me some stuff that he saw. And I have no way of proving or disproving what he's saying to me. I just have his word to go on. And yeah, I definitely believe that happens. My son had an experience. He had to have a colonoscopy, and he calls it his experience. And he said that while he was under the sedation, like he was completely out while he did this. He was maybe 7 or 8 years old at the time, maybe 6. So he was completely out at the time. And he said that he was completely aware of everything that was going around, that was going on at the time. He was telling me what the doctors were saying and all this, and he could describe the doctors. And so it's like, yeah, it's a possibility that he had himself an out-of-body experience.
Yeah. A lot of people talk about that when they're having medical procedures, if they're under anesthesia, or even like a near-death experience where they feel like they leave their body for a second and they can say exactly step by step what the medical staff did while they were supposedly, unconscious on the table. And it's amazing the detail that they have with these stories.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I do think that happens.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And another interesting thing that's been spoken of a lot lately with children in particular are past life memories where they literally can recall their entire life that they just lived. And for some reason, around the age of 6 or so, they tend to lose it almost every time. What was that documentary, Britt? That
Surviving Death.
I ask you every time because I can never remember.
On Netflix.
Yeah, Surviving Death. They have it was a mini series. I think there was 6 episodes, and in one of them, it was incredibly fascinating. This guy actually dedicated his studies to interviewing children about who claimed to have these past life experiences, and then he would actually find and validate like the information that they would talk about, and he would test them. He would show them pictures of like multiple women to be like, which one of these was your mom, multiple locations, which one of these was your house, and like they would get it every time, like 5 out of 5. And it is incredibly interesting and intriguing, and it makes you wonder why they all would lose that around the age of 6 or 7. Is it like societal conditioning? Is it just like our brains?
Well, up until about I have an extreme fear of water. I mean, I can drink it, I can bathe in it, take showers in it. I don't like swimming. I feel very claustrophobic in water. And my wife tries like hell so much. Come on, just get in the pool. It's like, no, I don't want to get in the pool. That anxiety takes over. Well, I was telling a friend of mine about that, and she said, in a former life, you were a soldier, and that's how you died. And I got my face just went, white when she said that, because up until the time I was 18 years old, I had a reoccurring dream of a World War I British soldier. And in the dream, he was running through a trench, and it was raining, and it had been raining, and there was flooding and water and all that everywhere. And he got shot in the back. And it wasn't the bullet that killed him. It was him falling into this puddle of water and actually drowning in that puddle because he couldn't move.
Right.
Wow.
So my friend Nancy, we spoke about her a few moments ago. She told me, she's like, that was a past life of yours that is intruding on your present life. And that's why you have such an extreme fear of water.
That makes sense. But I mean, to have the validation from your dream is amazing.
Yeah. So the reason I stopped dreaming it when I was 18 years old, that's because when he died, he was 18 when he died. And I have this extreme desire to go to England. And she says that is him wanting to go home. So hopefully one day I can take him home, and get to see some really cool stuff too along the way.
Definitely.
Oh yeah. I mean, speaking of Gettysburg history, going to England and Scotland and all of Europe, really, the history there. I mean,
sure.
I
way older.
Can't beat it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a friend who honeymooned in Scotland, and she's not even hugely into the paranormal, but she's interested. And they went to this one location where they literally made you like sign a waiver because people were like would have like heart attacks from the experiences they would have at the location. And I'm like, I want to go there so bad.
Accepted.
Sign me up.
Yeah, right. Hell yeah.
Do you know what the location was?
Not off the top of my head, but I can find out and have Brittany send it to you.
Yeah,
that's great, because I'd really like to know what the place is, because I'm thinking that might be Glam's Castle. They pronounce it Glams, but it's pronounced Glamis here. Considered to be one of the most intensely haunted places in all across Europe. So I'm kind of wondering if that's maybe what it was, because that's like one of the big ones that you want to see when you're in Scotland.
Yeah. No, I'll definitely find out. I am terrible with names. So that's why I always turn to Brittany, and I'm always like, hey, what was that again? What was that thing? That place we did?
Well, good thing my name is written down here. So yeah. I had the presence of mind to write my name in the bottom. So you're like, who the hell's this guy?
There you go.
An easier name though, not for nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, 8 letters.
I felt terrible. It took me like a half hour into the interview to pronounce Chris de Cesare's name correctly. Do you know how hard that was for me?
Yeah.
That was a hard name.
All right, good.
But one of the sweetest guys. But that's okay.
Yes.
I watched
You did? Yeah, that was
no,
a fun one.
I will watch it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he was so nice. It's such an interesting story too. It's amazing what you can get out of just not just one experience, but it was an intense experience, but you learn so much from it. All right, so let's jump into our next kind of like fun little bit to talk about. So you're known for talking about and sharing a lot of famous experiences and stories, especially on the Shadow Initiative. You have your where you talk about other people's experiences that have occurred. So what is your all-time favorite one to talk about?
Are we talking like personal experience, or are we talking about like famous haunted place?
Whatever stands out as your all-time favorite.
I'd have to say my all-time favorite, and the reason that I picked it to be number one, was the Congress Hotel here in Chicago on Michigan Avenue. It's a beautiful location. It has a lot of activity. Peg Leg Johnny, of course, being one of my favorites because he's an amputee as well. This spirit of a homeless man, and there's been a lot of activity over the years. But yes, that is my absolute favorite. But definitely my favorite is the city of Chicago as a whole, because it's got a lot of history, and there are so many different haunted places in and around the city. We live about 35 miles north of Chicago, and there's just a lot of really haunted places. In future episodes of Ghost Watch, I will be doing more of places in Chicago.
Nice. We'll look out for that for sure.
Definitely.
But you also talk not just about paranormal stuff. You talk about, well, yes, paranormal, but not just hauntings. You talk about all types of experiences. So
Sure.
that leads us into Brittany's next question.
Okay.
So I think I know the answer. But what subject under the paranormal umbrella is one of your favorites?
Vampires.
Yes.
Love vampires. It's amazing how vampiric folklore has become such a huge part of the West. One of the things that I like to ask people, and you don't really get to talk about vampires too much because everybody's ghost this, demon that. So it's like, I love talking about vampires. So when you think of vampires, and both of you, be honest, what do you think when you think of of a vampire?
I mean, I grew up on Buffy. So I think of David Borealis and how that constant struggle of good versus evil, and like sometimes they literally don't have the choice, like it's taken away from them, to not be a good person when they turn into a vampire.
Yeah.
I think that answers the question.
Okay. Brittany.
And for me, I'm between Interview with the Vampire and Bram Stoker's Dracula. I'm like that person.
So you guys have been brought up with the sexy vampire who is, kind of the anti-hero. He's been turned into this horrible creature, and he's got the constant battle between, he wants to remain human, but he's also a vicious killer that will stalk you until he bites you on the neck and sucks your blood, or her,
Yep.
So that's what you guys are saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
All wrong.
Figured that. I mean, gotta give it to Hollywood to never get it right.
I know.
Yeah, I mean, well, we really do have Todd Browning's 1930s masterpiece of Dracula to thank for that. We also have Bram Stoker to thank for that. We have Sheridan Le Fanu with Carmilla to thank for that, which actually predates Stoker's Dracula by many years. So we've all been sold this idea that it's the sexy vampire, but the folkloric vampire is not sexy by any means. Okay. If anything, the folkloric vampire is going to be closer to The Walking Dead or zombies than, Brad Pitt coming at you, with his fangs out. It's that's not what you're going to get.
Right.
For the longest time, the term that was used rather than vampire was revenant dead. And revenant dead, of course, meaning that this is an animated corpse that comes out of its tomb, comes out of its grave, and feeds on the living. And they're not really immortal in the sense like, you're going to live forever. They come out, spread some disease, maybe feed on people, and then they go back to the grave and then they're done. That is the real vampire of folklore. One of those vampires that we know was his name was Arnold Paoli, and he was a soldier in the 18th century, and he was attacked and bit by what he claims was a female vampire, and he went to her grave and killed her and smeared her blood all over him, and then ate the dirt from her grave because he believed that this would keep him from becoming a vampire. He gets back home, lives his life, dies, and a couple weeks after he dies, people start seeing Arnold walking around the village. And he's spreading disease, and he's biting people and sucking on their blood. That is actually a constant with many vampire with the folklore of vampires. We'll get into that a little bit more. So they go to his grave, and it looks like something out of a creature feature or a Hammer film. They dig him up, they chop his limbs up, they burn him, and then boom, that's done. Well, they also have to worry about the people that he's killed. So then they go in, and then they chop them up, and then they burn them, and problem solved. Okay? So now here's the interesting thing about vampiric folklore. Every ancient culture has a story of the revenant undead or a vampire. One of my favorite ones comes from China, and it's pronounced Jingxi. And Jingxi basically means undead, not to be confused with Shang-Chi, the current Marvel movie that's out there. It's called the Jingxi. And the Jingxi didn't suck a person's blood. The Jingxi would suck out their chi, their life force. And a famous story about that tells the tale of two soldiers on their way back from war, and they're tired and they're hungry, and man, they just need a place to get some sleep. They need some food, so they find this inn, and so they go to the guy after they've had their after they've drank all they could drink and eat all they could eat, and they're like, hey, we need a place to stay. So the innkeeper is like, well, all my rooms are taken up except one. And in that room, unfortunately, is the dead body of my daughter. She's being kept in there until burial. So they're like, you know what? We don't care. Just give us the room. We're going to sleep in there. So they go in and they're sleeping. And then in the middle of the night, one of the soldiers is awakened by this weird sound. And he awakens to see the corpse of this woman on top of his friend, sucking his chi out through his nose. So seeing that he's dead, he gets the Jingxi to chase him out of the building. And, he's saying things like, foul Jingxi, come and get me. So he's standing by a tree on the outside. He's got his sword ready to go, man. And the Jingxi flies at him. He ducks, and she digs her nails into the tree that he's standing in front of. He gets up, looks at her, chops her head right off, which is another thing that is very common in many vampiric folklore, removing the head.
Right.
So then the innkeeper comes out, sees his daughter there. She's headless, and he's like, "Oh my God, I'm so terribly sorry." And that's one of the one of the longest lasting stories of the Chinese vampire, the Jingxi.
That's interesting. So
It's my favorite.
Is the
I know you
chi?
could tell. So yeah, with the, like I was saying, the story of the Jingxi is definitely my absolute favorite tale of vampires, and it's they all, every single vampire around every single culture has that demonic entity or revenant undead who rises from the grave and either sucks your life force or sucks your blood out of you. But it's, as far as being the sexy vampire, doesn't exist.
So that's actually really interesting though, because it sounds almost like the vampires don't even know what they're doing. Like they're not there consciously. They're just almost programmed to just get up and suck out the life force or whatever. So it's not like this modern day idea of the vampires walking around, having relationships, hiding from society. Like they don't even realize they're doing it. They're just zombies.
Right, exactly. And it's have you guys ever read Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice?
I haven't read it, no.
I haven't read it, no.
There's a great part in the book where Louis and Claudia, they're traveling throughout Europe, and they're in Eastern Europe, and they're looking for others of their kind. Well, they find other vampires, but they're more of the revenant undead vampires rather than like them, where they have emotions and feelings and presumably a soul. These vampires don't. So, Anne Rice in the book, she covers that very well, that there are two different kinds of vampires. There are the ones like Louis and Lestat and Armand and Claudia, and then there are the kind that they're just the zombies.
Right.
They have no intelligence. They have no soul. They have no emotion. They have no attachment to anything.
Right. It's almost like they're more of a parasite or a virus than they are a living thing.
Well, that's exactly it. It's funny that you say that, because that's another thing that vampires, real vampires, the revenant undead, were blamed for. We're spreading disease.
Right.
We all know what tuberculosis is. It's a very deadly disease. Thankfully, nobody really gets anymore, and nobody really dies from it. However, in the 19th century, that wasn't the case. People were dying left and right from tuberculosis or the White Death or consumption, as they called it.
Yeah.
Another famous vampire case happened in Rhode Island in the 1800s with Mercy Brown. She was a young girl. She was the daughter of one of the more prominent citizens in the town of Exeter, Rhode Island. And people were dying in the town. They were dying from consumption. And consumption was blamed on vampires at that time. For whatever reason, people got it into their head that Mercy Brown, after she died, that she was the one that was causing these issues. So they dug her up, did some old world stuff on her, removed her heart, burned her heart, mixed the ash into a drink and gave it to her brother, who drank it because apparently that was supposed to cure him of the consumption. It didn't. He died anyways. So, that was another attribute of the revenant undead, is that they are spreaders of disease. And just today I was watching something, and one of the diseases that was very common back then was rabies. And rabies would spread among a population real quick.
Right.
And a lot of people thought that was another disease that was being spread by a vampire, was rabies. And so, yes, we have this commonality with all these cultures, with these nightmarish beings, spreaders of disease, killers of men. And really, it could all just boil down to that these are people that had a disease and were in fact spreading it, rabies being one of them.
Wow.
Well, there's also the stories from back in the day of people accidentally being buried alive. That's why they had the little bell that they would put into the coffins. So you have to wonder if maybe they didn't really die. Maybe they were just really sick. And, when this vampire emerged, maybe they were just like diseased, diseased people.
Well, that was another thing too. A very rare disease called porphyria. It's extraordinarily rare. It happens in maybe 1 in a couple million people. It doesn't really happen so much anymore. But people who have porphyria, they have very pale skin. They're iron deficient, so they need blood transfusions in order to survive. And they can't really go out in the sun because the sun is very harsh on their skin. So a lot of these stories could be from people who were suffering from this illness.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah.
So do you believe zombies existed or do exist now?
Zombies, no, because I mean, you have
zombies.
to zombies is a very specific thing that is for voodoo. That was where a hoodoo man would create a slave of sorts, and they would call it a zombie. So that's a real zombie. Do I believe that vampires are real? I don't know. And that's another thing that just makes it so interesting, is that you're constantly left with questions. It's like, are ghosts real? Are demons real? Are vampires real? Are Bigfoot real? You can never really say with any certainty that these things don't exist, because you don't know enough about the spirit world. You don't know enough about what is really truly out there in this world. I believe me, I love science, but man, we still live in a very, very big world where there is a lot of things out there that we just don't understand yet.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I mean, there's so much of the planet that we haven't even, like the deep oceans that we haven't even been able to breach yet. Like, who knows what's down there?
We know we are more aware of the moon or Mars or the other planets of the solar system than we know more about that than what we do what is in the bottom of the ocean.
Yep, definitely.
Well, they say, not to skip to another topic, but the recent emergence or confirmation of UFOs, many of them, they say they see coming out from the deep ocean, like in the middle of the ocean. And it's like, that would make perfect sense if we had visitors from other planets who were just trying to stay off our radar. They would set up these stations because they have the equipment and the technology to do it deep down in the ocean where we don't yet have the ability to get to.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible. What was that movie called back in the 80s? I think it was called The Abyss. Okay. Where they addressed that. It was a great movie. They addressed that aliens were among us, but they lived on the bottom of the Marianas Trench. And I thought that was interesting. I mean, that could make sense. If they're hiding among us, maybe that's where they're hiding. I don't know, but ufology is only really something I got interested fairly recently. It's really not something that I've followed. As much as like other people, unlike cryptozoology, which has always been an interest of mine, since I was a kid as well. But yeah, do I think that there are other worlds out there? Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the height of human hubris to say that these other beings couldn't possibly exist. But whether or not they're actually making it here, over tens of millions of light years, the jury is still out with me on that one.
Yeah. Well, that's another huge change in societal beliefs is regarding aliens. Because I mean, I even remember I believe it was in the 90s, the movie Contact came out with and she was a scientist and everybody mocked her because her goal as a scientist was try to find communication from alien life. And then here we are 20, 30 years later, where it's basically confirmed it exists. And it's not a laughable thing anymore. Like scientists are saying, oh yeah, they're out there. We don't know if they're here. But I mean, for as many planets and solar systems as exist in the universe, and as old as it is, it's kind of egotistical to think that we're the only ones existing throughout the entire thing, because we're babies in comparison. Our planet is almost very newly formed, and the human species as a whole has existed for just a blip in regards to the total time frame of the existence of the universe. So it's like we are still so young to think that no one else is out there, whether they be good, bad, indifferent, look like us, not look like us, conscious, unconscious. To think there's nothing is kind of really.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, people are always like, well, you know, we're ready for disclosure. We're ready to learn the truth, and it's like, no, we're not. We're not even close to being ready. We can't even get rid of. We can't even get along with our next door neighbor who is a different skin color than us, or if they happen to be LGBTQ or a different religion. We can't even get along with them. How are you going to bring in something that has followed an entirely different evolutionary path that is vastly different from us in not only language, but in appearance, in culture, psychology, physiology? How are we going to be, our brains are immediately going to go back to tribal warfare days. Immediately. We're going to see them threat. We're going to hate. You're going to have people who hate them. Where we are absolutely not ready. Maybe in a couple thousand years, we'll finally be ready to accept that. But man, we got to work on ourselves before we even think about finding out whether or not aliens exist.
Yeah. I mean, we're our own worst enemy, really, because the only reason I feel like they would even expose themselves to us at this point would be because they would see us as too much of a threat to either ourselves or a nearby planet, because now that we're able to create this technology where we could leave potentially, like not long term, you know, but like we've gotten to the moon, we've now sent probes to Mars and to the outer rims of our solar system. They're seeing that as like, oh no, the kindergartners learned how to drive a car. This is a problem.
Yeah, right.
You are absolutely not ready for this, and I think that us as a species, we have a very long way to go. We got, like I said before, we got to work on ourselves before we can even think about adding something like that into the mix.
Yeah. Sorry, that was a bit of an evil laugh because I totally agree. Like, we're just screwed at this point. So it's like we need to figure ourselves out first, you know? Yeah. You know, it's like the advice they give to people before getting into a relationship. Be happy with yourself first. We have to do the same thing as a human species.
Yeah, right?
Oh, no, we absolutely do. You know, and I don't mean it to, you know, come off as sounding like preachy or anything like that. But, you know, at the end of the day, when you really sit back and think about it, we're not ready for that. Yeah, disclosure sounds awesome and all. It'd be great to learn that. And I think that on an individual basis, people are ready for that kind of thing. But us as a species as a whole, nah.
Yeah, we'll get there.
I agree.
Yeah, there. Eventually. I hope we do.
Yeah. Well, bouncing back to planet Earth here, let's jump into cryptozoology. Jesus, I cannot talk right now. This is water, just so you guys know, this is water.
Sure.
I'm skeptical at this point, but go ahead, proceed.
So we talked about vampires, and obviously, you know, we touched on that subject quite a bit. I'm still curious about the whole like vampire lifestyle people live. You know, there are those people who drink blood because they think they are a vampire.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this when we were, you know, before we came on. I mean, I'm like an old goth punker from the '90s, and you know, once a goth, always a goth. But there are people. There's like a subset of the gothic subculture that's really super underground, and these are people. They're called sanguinarians, and they believe that they need human blood in order to gain power, to gain not really so much immortality, but to gain power, to gain sustenance. I am the most squeamish individual when it comes to blood. Thankfully, my wife is a nurse, so when our kid goes down and he gets a cut, there you go, it's all yours, because I will puke all over the place. Yeah, but there is an underground subculture of these sanguinarians that they do this, and that shit's dangerous, man. I mean, with diseases and other things, it's not something you want to mess with. But again, hey man, I'm all about choice, and I'm not going to tell somebody, don't suck your buddy's blood. Go for it. It's all you.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. When we were in New Orleans, they weren't even really hiding it so much. There's like a little pocket of culture there of people who just like out and about were like, oh yeah, I'm a vampire. And it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. There's
like, have fun.
Fangs and all that.
Yeah.
Oh,
no,
yeah.
I know. There's a club here in Chicago that I used to hang out. It's called Exit. And downstairs is a punker bar. Upstairs is the goth industrial bar. And, you would see people up there, they got fangs. And, I mean, people actually will file their teeth here to make it look like that. And it's like, oh, my God, how do you do that? I can't even imagine how painful that is.
Yeah.
But, it's definitely that subculture is there. And if that's what they want to do, man, so be it.
Right.
As long as the people they're getting the blood from are volunteering to give them the blood.
And, and it is. I mean, I have read up quite a bit on what sanguinarians do, and they find themselves donors, like people who are willing to do this. And they have to keep themselves clean. They can't have any kind of disease or anything like that. And once they do have any kind of disease, they're gone.
Right.
So, but yeah, it's definitely a willing participant. It's not like you see with Lestat grabbing some prostitute and sucking her blood and then, sending her off to, the afterlife or whatever. It's not like
that. Yeah. I think the creepiest part of Interview with a Vampire for me was what's the little girl? What was her name?
Claudia.
Yeah, Claudia.
Because she was the most vicious one of them all. And it's like, you look at her and you're like, you're so tiny.
She had a lot to prove. She's surrounded by Louis and Lestat, these vicious, bloodthirsty killers. Well, not so much Louis, but Lestat. He's this vicious killer. She had a lot to prove.
Yeah,
it's true.
Well, I almost would prefer a zombie vampire to one of those.
I think that's creepier anyway.
It is kind of creepy. So on that kind of subject also a little bit, you mentioned Bigfoot just recently. Can you give us your take on that? Or Sasquatch, are they one and the same? Or because I believe multiple countries, kind of the same theory, multiple countries have similar stories and similar experiences of a creature. Each has its own name for it. So what is your take on Bigfoot?
Well, here's my thing on Bigfoot. Bigfoot, Sasquatch, that's kind of the Native American name for this creature. This is a creature that does in fact appear in the fossil record. And it was called Gigantopithecus, and it came from like Russia and Asia. Some people believe that this animal came across the land bridge that early humans came across from that area of the world over to this area. And I honestly believe that this is a creature that has evolved from Gigantopithecus. According to what we know from paleontologists, Gigantopithecus was a vicious animal. And it would tear anybody apart that came across it. So I think that if this creature does exist, that it is descended from this creature that does in fact appear in the fossil record. And we do see creatures like this from all across the world. We see the Almas over in Asia. We have the Green Man from the folklore of Bavaria and Germany and that area of the world. there's always there have been these creatures, and I personally believe that they are descendants of things like Gigantopithecus or descendants of Neanderthal man, this relic population that has stuck around. And the thing that really bugs me the most about this is that mainstream science will automatically say, no, we're sorry, these creatures don't exist. Well, paleontologists are constantly looking for the so-called missing link.
Mm-hmm.
What if these creatures are the missing link that links that puts itself in the line of human evolution from when we were just swinging from trees to what we are now? What if this represents this missing link? And I think that, science, they really have got to get on this and be like, okay, you know what? We're going to be a little bit more serious about this. We're going to look into a little bit more, because this could represent what we are missing in human evolution.
Mm-hmm. Well, what are your theories then as to why nobody can, like, people claim to find footprints or a blurry video, and then it's always just gone where nobody can find them? What's your theory? Like, where are they going? Are they underground? Are they different dimensions at this point?
No, I'm not one of those people that subscribe to the idea that they're, an interdimensional being of some sort. You know what? They're in their element. They're in a forest or whatever. They grew up there. They live there. They're there 24/7. They know it intimately, and they're able to disappear like that. Like you have guys who are in the military, special forces guys, who they learn that skill. They can just disappear from sight. They're still there. You just can't see them because they have that skill to be able to blend in. And have you guys ever seen the movie Harry and the Hendersons?
Yes.
Okay. There is that scene at the end of Harry and the Hendersons when they bring Harry back. You know what? I feel so bad doing this because Brittany's never seen this. So I'm sorry, Brittany. Spoiler alert.
Okay.
And anybody else who hasn't seen it. But there is a scene at the end where the Henderson family, they return Harry to his to the mountains in the forest of the Pacific Northwest. And he walks off into the forest, and then all of a sudden you see more Bigfoot. All of a sudden they just sort of walk out from in front of a tree or walk out of a bush. These are creatures that are that are intimately aware of their surroundings, and they can hide and disappear seemingly. So I think that I using the word theory, I think, is a word that gets thrown around quite a bit in the paranormal. But my thought is that these are just animals that they're in their element. They know where they're going. They know what they're doing, and they're able to just disappear while still being there.
Yeah. So basically, you're saying that they're not really living in this secret spot. They're more just stealthy and just know how to be out of your line of sight.
They know how to camouflage themselves very well. And so that's what I think. The whole blurry video thing, I always thought that was funny. People are always like, well, it's a blurry video, can't possibly be real. Well, when a lot of these videos were taken, it's not like people were whipping out their iPhone, their iPhone 10, and then, I mean, this is like movie quality video that you're looking at here. No, these videos were taken at a time when, like the Patterson Gimlin film, that was filmed on a high 8. That was blurry, that was glitchy, that was weird looking, and that's how a lot of those videos were taken. It's not like it is nowadays where you have a movie quality video in carrying in your pocket.
Right.
So. Yeah.
No, makes sense. So we talked about vampires, we talked about aliens, we talked about Bigfoot. What do we got? We got Mothman is still out there. I know we have a couple of team members who love talking about Mothman.
Mothman. You know what? I think that Mothman was a mixture of urban legend and definitely seeing something that people couldn't quite explain. I know that a lot of people think that Mothman was an alien. He could very well be, or that he was a interdimensional being. Very well could be, but at the same time, I do think that it was like a lot of that is urban legend.
Yeah. Yeah, but it made for a good movie.
Yeah, right.
You know, I saw that movie with my wife back when I don't even know if we were married yet. And I left that movie and I was like, oh man, that movie was great. And she was like, my God, it was so boring.
Aw.
I'm like,
Doesn't
"All right, you
it
know,
have Richard Gere though? Come on, that should be enough for her. Or am I thinking of the wrong movie?
no, it is Richard Gere, and I don't think she's into Richard Gere. So
That's sad. I love Richard Gere.
He's not
she
wrong.
prefers all of this to Richard Gere. So there you go.
Work it. Okay. Is that so? I think we've covered cryptozoology pretty well.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So let's jump back into the paranormal a little bit. One of our favorite things to ask everyone is just some bit of advice, not only for a team like ours that's kind of we've been around but not forever, and then you have people out there who are looking to jump into the paranormal game. So what piece of advice would you give to somebody who's looking into joining a team?
I have several pieces of advice, but first and foremost is forget everything that you know. Forget everything that you've seen on television, because it's not a scare a minute. It's pretty damn boring at times. I'm sure you guys have found that out for yourselves.
Oh, yeah.
Always be respectful, not only of the location, but also of the living as well as the dead, because they deserve our respect. Don't ever trespass. I hate that so much. Like, you know, I think the paranormal field has gotten a number of black eyes over the last 10 years of people breaking into an allegedly haunted place. I think of a plantation in Louisiana about 10 years ago where they set the place on fire. Yeah, and it happens. Don't trespass. If you're not supposed to be there, get permission. If somebody says no, don't be there. That's all there is to it. But yeah, I think be open-minded, but don't be so open-minded, as Charles Fort said, don't let your brain fall out. Don't believe everything that you see. Don't believe everything that you come across. Have that mindset where it's like, be objective. You know, don't believe everything. Question things. And if you can disprove something, awesome. But if you try to disprove something and you're still left with evidence of the paranormal, chances are it is really the paranormal.
Mm-hmm.
So these are just words of advice I give to people. But I really got to put a lot of emphasis on, man, don't believe everything you see on TV, because that is not how it is.
Yeah.
We tell people that all the time.
Yeah. Everyone, when they hear you're in the paranormal field, they automatically assume like it's all fun and games and ghost chasing. And I'm like, no, we don't chase ghosts. We're a client-based team. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of dedication. It's a lot of time. And got to be respectful of everybody involved.
Oh, yeah.
Especially when you're doing private homes, because you can definitely run into some things in private homes. I've investigated people's homes where there is, now I'm not a doctor or anything like that. I'm a guy with a high school diploma. But I have been in homes where, you know, it seemed like there was drug use going on, or there seemed like there was mental illness going on, or you know, some kind of addiction, or even child abuse. And you know, I have to hand that kind of thing over to people who are qualified to deal with that. The social workers, authority, you know, law enforcement officials, if need be, because it does happen. Because when you're in this field, this is a person-based field. You are going to be dealing with people, all kinds of people. Just, you know, like I said, always remember to be respectful And don't be judgmental of people, because they may think that they're dealing with something, and it could be something else, something that's completely natural.
Mm-hmm.
So just always be respectful and always be open-minded.
I think it's also important on that note to make sure that your team consists of a wide variety of people who still get along but have different backgrounds and understandings. Like one person might catch like the signs of some kind of psychological issue where no one else might, like it's important to have that balance of your teammates.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Brittany, did you have anything you wanted to ask before we kind of start wrapping things up?
Nope. I think I'm good on my end.
You're good on your end.
Yeah.
We covered a lot tonight.
We
so
did. Love it.
One question we like to ask everybody before we kind of end our fun little chat is we like to ask people, we might already know this because, of your experience as a child, but we like to ask everybody what their oh shizzle moment is. Basically what that moment was where like you were interested in the paranormal, you might be investigating, but then you had that one experience that like shook you to the core that made you go, oh my God, this is real. All of this stuff exists. Do you have that moment?
No, that moment was when I saw Mrs. McNett.
Okay.
That was my moment. That's when I knew that this is real. And it's hard to think of yourself as being 8 years old, but I knew right away that it was like, this was something that isn't supposed to exist, but it does. And it kind of just, that put me on the path that I'm on.
Okay. Very cool. So do you have any books or anything that you want to tell everybody about that you have coming up to look out for?
Yes. You guys already mentioned it. My first book is The Geek's Guide to the Strange and Unusual, Poltergeist, Ghosts, and Demons. My second book is called Behold, Shocking True Tales of Terror and Some Other Spooky Stuff. Book number 3 is called Bullets, Booze, and Babes, The Haunted History of Chicago and Illinois. And I am currently not really so much working on a fourth book because the thing's already written itself. I am with my publisher, we are taking a compilation of many of the things that I've written over the years and putting it together into a Ghost Watch book.
Awesome.
So for that next year sometime. Places that I've written for. Okay. So paranormalstudy.com, spookyisles.com, Paranormal Underground Magazine, Legends Magazine, supernaturalmagazine.com. I don't think I'm missing anything else. And if you want to see me in action, you could check out Ghost Tapes 2 and a few episodes of Ghost Tapes, the series. That's where you can actually see me doing the biz.
Awesome. So thank you so much for being with us tonight. It's been a delight. We've learned a lot, especially about vampires, which is uber interesting. So thank you for taking your time out. And everybody else, please be sure to check out. We had the information on the bottom of the screen on the ticker there. And please be sure to like, comment, subscribe to the YouTube channel, click the bell for notifications, stay tuned, and, we'll have more to come. Again, thank you to Mr. Rick Hale for being with us tonight. Everybody out there, thank you so much. Everybody remember to stay safe and stay curious and stay tuned. On behalf of the entire Epicedium Paranormal team, thank you so much for watching our video. Please be sure to click the like button and also comment. Also, subscribe to our page and click the little bell so that you get notifications on future videos and our live sessions. You can also find our other social media platforms in our Linktree in our bio. Our Linktree also gives you the ability to submit an inquiry if you yourself are having a paranormal problem in your home or business. Thank you again for watching our video, and please be sure to stay tuned for future content and also stay curious. Bye, guys.